Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Yud Aleph, Daf 11 of Masechta Yoma. The Daf continues discussing mezuzahs. We're going to see some interesting Gemara at the beginning about mezuzahs at the entrances to cities. Then we get to a machlokas between Rabbi Yehuda and Rav Kahana about how to treat different storage areas vis-a-vis sukkah. We come back to a Gemara that we saw in Daf Yud Aleph of Masechta Eruvin about like an archway. Do you have to put up a mezuzah in an archway? Machlokas l'chachamim and Reb Meir over there. And then at the end, some other interesting scenarios like synagogues, things like that. So let us get started on Daf Yud Aleph of Masechta Yoma. Where are we? Tana Rabbanan. So we are about 5-6 lines into Daf Yud Aleph. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught Bisharecha. Right, the pasuk says Uchsavta mezuzos b'secha v'sharecha, that you write the mezuzahs on the doorposts of your house and your gateways. Echad shari batim, whether it's the gate of your house, v'echad shari chatzeros, whether it's the gate of your courtyard, v'echad shari medinos, whether it is the gate of your states, v'echad shari ayaros, whether it's the gate of your cities. Yeshboen mitzvah lamakom, there is a mitzvah to place a mezuzah on these gates. Mishum shenemar, as the pasuk says, uchsavtam mezuzos b'secha v'sharecha, that you will write them on the mezuzahs of your homes and your gates. Okay. Amalei Abaye to Rav Safra, says Abaye to Rav Safra. Hane avule de mechozah my time lo avdulu rabbanon mezuzah. Interesting. Rav Safra, Abaye asked Rav Safra, how come the gates of the city of Mechozah, which is where Rava was the Rav, so how come the gates of Mechozah do not have mezuzah? And Rashi points out that V'hayu Ruban Yisrael, that the majority of people of the dwellers of Mechozah were Yidden. For some reason, I didn't look it up, but for some reason in my mind we had a Gemara in Eruvin that would imply otherwise, but I'd have to look it up. But anyways, apparently the Mechozah was a place that was majority of Yidden. So Abaye wanted to know, how come the gates of Mechozah do not have a mezuzah? Omerle, so if Safra responds to Abaye, Hanu chizik le'akra dechove hu da'avide, says Rav Safra, well, though that gate, those gates, they're really just supporting beams for the kube building that is above them. So they're not really like a gate. They're really just kind of like supports for the building that's above them. Abaye says, yeah, but so what? The people who live in this building, shouldn't they need a mezuzah for these gateways because they're using it like to get into their building? Because in this kubi building, it lives the warden of the jail. And because the warden of the jail lives there, so shouldn't we need to put up a mezuzah on these gates to Mechozah, which are also the support for this building that this jailer lives in? De'atanya, as we learn in a brayso, Beis HaKnesses, if you have a synagogue, sheish bo beis dira lechazan HaKnesses, that there is a apartment in the synagogue, and the beadle of the synagogue lives in the apartment, chayev is b'mezuzah, you have to put up a mezuzah. So if you have a space that maybe wouldn't require a mezuzah, but there is but it's used for living space, so you'd put up a mezuzah. So shouldn't the gates to Mechozah require a mezuzah? Elomar Abaye, rather Abaye says, let me jump in here. I think the reason why Mechozah doesn't have a mezuzah is mishum sakona, because of a danger. And as Rashi points out, shelo Yoma Amelech kshof masisim b'shari iri, that the king shouldn't say, you're doing magic on the gates to my city. What is this mezuzah? What is this strange, interesting, esoteric scroll that you're putting up on the gates of my city? Get rid of this magic, and it can create sort of an uncomfortable, dangerous situation. So that is why we don't put up a mezuzah on the gate of Mechozah, because we don't want to publicly be displaying our maybe less understandable traditions. Very interesting. But it seems like the concern is really out of sakana, not out of fear. Meaning the issue is out of fear. Meaning, I don't know. I like reading this. I'm thinking like, what about Eruvin? Right. We come to town, and all of a sudden we want to put like fish line around the whole town. Shouldn't this be similar to the concern for not putting up a mezuzah, even though really you should have a mezuzah on the gate of the city, but don't put up a mezuzah because we don't want to sort of like draw attention to our strange kind of practices. So what about the fact that we go into all these cities and we put up like these strange kind of like fish line around the city? But I mean, it could be that the point is that it's about sakana. It's not a meaning it could be dangerous if the king is going to kill you because out of concern of like, what are you doing? But I assume that in many places that's probably less of an issue. Akoponim Titania, as we learn in the Brayso, mezuzah yochin ivdekas pamayim b'shavua, that the mezuzah of an individual is checked once a week, v'sharabim paimim b'yovel, whereas if it's a public mezuzah, so then you check it. Did I say week? Sorry, 1 second. An individual's mezuzah you check once a week, but meaning a shavua in this context is 7 years. Meaning a yovel is a 50-year cycle, so a yovel is made up of 7 weeks, kilu 7-year groups, and then yovel is the 50th year. Well, it's taka machlokas, I think. Anyways, so an individual's mezuzah you check twice every 7 years. I assume that many people probably do it even less frequently than that, but anyways. And if it's like a communal mezuzah, so then you check it twice every 50 years. All right. Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Yehuda Maisa ba'artovin echad shayabodek mezuzos b'shuka elyon shel tzipori. There was a story with a certain artovin. Okay, it's unclear what exactly an artovin is, but a certain person who was checking mezuzahs in the upper market of Tzipori. And a certain like official found him and exploited him, extorted from him 1,000 zuz. So we see that there was like this dangerous situation. You know, you had this guy who's publicly checking mezuzahs, and then it kind of came to this nudnik, took 1,000 zuz from him. The last time I remember reading about the upper market of Tzipori was actually a discussion of Rabbi Elazar ben Pedas, that he was so engrossed in his learning that he would be in the lower market of Tzipori and you would find this scarf in the upper market of Tzipori. And one time somebody looked at the scarf and there was a snake in there, a serpent. And now Rabbi Elazar Taka says, Shluchei mitzvah ein nizoken. But 1 second, doesn't Rabbi Elazar say that people who are messengers doing a mitzvah, they don't get damaged, they don't get, in trouble? So how could it be that this guy was checking mezuzahs and somebody extorted him for 1,000 zuz? It's different if you're in a place where it's a dangerous place. And I guess the Shuk Ha'elyon Shel Tzipori fits that bill as being a dangerous place. Okay, fine. We saw this Gemara at the beginning of Masechta Pesachim. The pasuk says, "Vayomer Shmuel." Shmuel says to God, "Ech elich, how can I go to anoint David HaMelech? V'shama Shaul v'aragani, that if Shaul finds out, he's going to kill me." Vayomer Hashem eglas boker tikach biadecha. God says to Shmuel, "Well, take a calf with you, v'amarta, and if you need to, just say Lizbach L'Hashem Basi. I came to offer a sacrifice to God." So we see that even though Shmuel was going to do the will of God, he was still concerned that he can get in trouble, because Lamaisa, if Shaul was going to kill him, It's still a dangerous situation. Just because you're on a mission of God doesn't necessarily mean that there's not going to be any concern of danger if there is in fact danger present. Okay. Now we get to machlokas between Rav Kahana and Rav Yehuda regarding different spaces that may or may not be chayiv mezuzah. Here we go. Tani Rav Kahana coming to Rav Yehuda. Rav Kahana taught in front of Rav Yehuda. Beis hatevenu, beis habakaru, beis ha'etzum, beis ha'otzarus. So a place where you store grain, straw, a place where you store calves, and a place where you store wood, and a place where you store like wine and oil and things like that. P'turim min ha-mezuzah, you don't put a mezuzah there. Because the women are neosos there. Umay neosos. What are the women neosing over there? Rochzos. They bathe there. Okay. So because the women bathe there, they're not wearing clothing when they bathe. So we don't want to have a mezuzah up on that space. Amar Rav Yehuda, says Rav Yehuda to Rav Kahana, time of the rochzos. So you're saying that the reason that there's no mezuzah in these spaces is because the women bathe there. Hastama chayavin. But if not for that reason, these storage areas would be chayav in a mezuzah. It's just because the women bathe there, that is why we don't put a mezuzah. V'atanya, but we learn in a brayso, Reves Bakar p'turim in a mezuzah, that what's it called, the place where you keep cows? A cow, I don't know, like a ranch, stable, cow holder? A refes. We'll just call it a refes. That's like an Israeli thing, like the refet. Alright. Anyways, but Tani Refes Bakar P'tur min mezuzah. We learned in a brayso that a refes of Bakar is P'tura from a mezuzah. I hope you enjoyed my translation into English there, into Hebrew. So Rav Yehuda has a kasha on Rav Kahana. Rav Kahana says, look, Me'ikar Adin, essentially, these storage spaces are chayiv in mezuzah, but because the women bathe there, so we don't put up a mezuzah over there. Says Rav Yehuda, that's not true. These storage spaces are inherently potter from a mezuzah. Elamaina osos. So rather than says what? So says Rav Yehuda, what's this neosos thing that the women are doing? They're miskashtos. It means that they're putting on, adorning themselves, putting on jewelry and things. And this is what it means according to Rav Yehuda. That these storage spaces, even though the women kind of put on their jewelry and things over there, and you would think that would make it considered like a living space, and it should be chayiv in mezuzah, nonetheless they are peturim. So we kind of have Rav Yehuda and Rav Kahana are kind of arguing about two things. One is that they're arguing about the definition of this word neosos. Is it referring to bathing or is it referring to putting on jewelry? But then really what the nafkaminas are what's the status of a storage area? According to Rav Kahana, look, the default status of a storage area is that it's chayiv in a mezuzah. Only because the women bathe there, that's why it's potter. According to Rav Yehuda, the default status of these storage areas is that they're potter. And guess what? Even if the women use it to put on their jewelry, i.e. as a living space, it's still potter, these storage spaces. Amar Rav Kahana, so Rav Kahana says to Rav Yehuda, V'sha'anoshim iskashtos b'hem p'turin, says Rav Kahana to Rav Yehuda what? That these storage spaces where the women are putting on their jewelry and it's kilu, it's a living space, it's going to be potter from mezuzah, like you're arguing. V'atani, we're learning about Refes Bakar P'tur min mezuzah. This refes is this cow area is p'tur from mezuzah. V'sha'anoshim miskashtos b'chayeves b'mezuzah. But if the women are putting on their jewelry there, then it's going to be chayiv in mezuzah. So Rav Yehuda, how can you say that, if the women are putting on the jewelry, then it's still potter? We have a brayso that says that they're chayiv. So rather, what do you have to say? Miskashtos tanoi. That this thing about when the woman put on their jewelry or not, it's a machlokas tanoi. So the didinami stoma tanoi. And says Rav Kahana that just like it's a machlokas tanoim about if the women put on their jewelry, does it make it now chayiv mezuzah or potter mezuzah? Says Rav Kahana, I want to say that also the default status of these storage areas would be a machlokas tanoim about is it chayiv mezuzah or potter from mezuzah. Titania, and here's a brayso that says beisecha. The pasuk says uchsafim mezuzos beisecha. You put on the mezuzahs of your house. Beischa miyuchad lecha. It has to be your house that's specific for you. Prad leveis hatevin or leveis habakar, to the exclusion of these storage areas, right? The straw storage, or where you have cows, or leveis ha'etzim, or where you keep wood, or leveis ha'utzaros, or for where you keep like wine and oil and things like that. Shabtur min mezuzah. So those places are turin v'yesh mechayvin. And those who taka say they're chayiv. So Rav Kahana wants to argue, and we're going to explain this in more detail in a minute, that Rav Kahana wants to argue. So you see that these storage areas, the Tanakama says potter, v'yeshem chayvin. There are those who say that it's taka chayiv. Okay, the brayso then continues be'emes amru, that then they said beis hakisei uveis haburski, the bathroom and the tanning place, right, where you tan hides, the tannery, uveis hamerchatz, and the bathhouse, uveis hatvila, and when you go to the mikvah, v'shanoshim neosos boyen, and also where the noshim are neosos, which is a machlokas, of course. Rav Kahana and Rav Yehuda, p'tur min mezuzah, is potter from mezuzah. So now, Rav Kahana matar's the time, Rav Yehuda matar's the time. We're now going to go over this brayso and explain it according to Rav Kahana and according to Rav Yehuda. Here we go. Rav Kahana matar's the time. This is how Rav Kahana takes this brayso and explains it according to his view, which is that the default status of these storage areas is that it is a machlokas. Okay? It's machlokas, whether it's chayiv or potter from mezuzah. And that he also understands miskashtos, right, that everyone would agree that if these women are putting on jewelry, then it would be considered a living space and it would be chayiv in a mezuzah. And that neosos also means bathing. So here we go. So Rav Kahana mataritz the taime, Beisecha, Beischa Miyuchad Lecha, right? We say in this brisa that it has to be your house, a house that's specific to you. Prad Leveisa Tevin, to the exclusion of where you have your straw, Leveisa Baku, Leveisa Eitzim, Leveisa Otos, all these kinds of storage areas. Sheptur Min HaMezuzah, they're potter from mezuzah bistam. That the default status of these storage areas is that it's potter from mezuzah. V'yeshim Mechayim bistam. To those who say that the default status of these areas is that it would be chayiv mezuzah. Okay. Now, Be'emes Amru, they said, Beis HaKisei, a bathroom, Beis HaBorski, a tannery, Beis HaMerchatz, where you, a bathhouse, Beis HaTvila, where you go to the mikveh, V'shanashim Na'osos Boen, and where the Nashim are Na'osos, Umay Na'osos, what's Na'osos? Says of Kahana Rochatzos, it means bathing. P'turim min HaMezuzah. So even if you say that these storage areas are chayiv mezuzah by default, if the women bathe there, so then it would be potter. Okay, fine. So that's how Rav Kahana wants to explain the brisa. So we see it's machlokas about the default status, and everyone agrees that if the women bathe there, so then even if it's chayiv mezuzah, it's going to be potter from mezuzah. But if the women kind of put on jewelry there, so then even the Manda Amru says potter from mezuzah, would say chayiv mezuzah. Fine. Yachi, if that's the case, then hainu merchatz. If we say then the osos means bathing, well, the brisa had already said that a beis hamerchatz is potter from mezuzah. So why would we have to say that if the women bathe there, it's going to be potter from mezuzah? So Hashmin and Merchatz Dua, Hashmin and Merchatz Diyach. No, because the Chiddush is that a Beis HaMerchatz is a public bathhouse, right? But that where the women are bathing, that means privately, in their own kind of this straw storage place. The Sagadati Chamina, because I may have thought to say Merchatz Derabim, Dunafish Zuame, that in a public bathhouse where maybe it's dirty, so that's why it'd be potter from mezuzah. Merchatz Diyachid Dunafish Zuame, Emili Chayv mezuzah. I might think that in a personal bathhouse, like a place where a woman bathes privately in her own, storage house on a property or whatever. So then I might think that it would be chayv in mezuzah. It's not dirty or whatever. So Kamash Malan, we're saying no, even there it's potter from mezuzah. Fine. Rav Yehuda Mutar, it's the time Rav Yehuda explains this brisa according to his explanation. Hachi Katani, this is what it's saying. Beisecha, when the pasuk says you put the mezuzah in your house, Beischa Miyuchad Lecha, it's your private house. Prad Leveis HaTevin, to exclusion of these storage areas, Beis HaTevin, Leveis HaBaku, Leveis HaEsim, Leveis HaOtzaros, all these kind of storage areas, Sheptur Min HaMezuzah, that they're going to be potter from mezuzah. Alpha Bishum is Kashtos, and that's even if the women put on their jewelry there, i.e. even if they use it as a living space. So says Rav Yehuda, these kind of storage areas, or like where you have your animals, so then by default they are potter from mezuzah, and that's even if the women adorn themselves there. V'yesh mechayim b'miskashtos. There are those, however, who argue, says Rav Yehuda, that when it comes, if the women use it for putting on their jewelry, i.e. if it's a living space, so then if it's used also as a living space, so then there are those who say that it will be chayiv mezuzah. Aval stam to be akol potter. But everyone agrees that by default, these places are potter from a mezuzah. Be'emes Amru, they said, Beis HaKisei, Beis HaBorski, Beis HaMerchatz, Beis HaTvila, right? The bathroom, the tannery, the bathhouse, and the mikvah, Afapisha Noshim Eskashtos Bo, and even if the women put on their jewelry there, P'turim Min HaMezuzah, Mishum Denavish Zuame, it's going to be potter from mezuzah because it's dirty in these places. Rav Yehuda, Stama, Divrei Akol, potter. But one second, can Rav Yehuda really get away with the argument that according to all opinions, the default status of these kind of storagey areas is that it's potter from mezuzah? V'atanya, we learn about it, bisharecha, that you put the mezuzah on your gates, echad shari batim, whether it's the gate of your house, v'echad shari chatzeris, or of your courtyard, v'echad shari medinos, v'echad shari yarus, whether it's the gates of your states and your cities, v'refes, and also this cow area, velulin, and the chicken coop, umatbein, and where you keep your straw, v'otzros yayin, and where you keep your wine, v'otzros shemen, and your oil, chayovin b'mezuzah. It's taka chayiv in a mezuzah. So we see already from here that these storage areas, there's at least one opinion that says that it's chayiv in a mezuzah. So how could Rav Yehuda say that everyone agrees that these storage areas are potter from mezuzah? Clearly there's a brisa which is saying that you're chayiv in a mezuzah. Continues the brisa, Yochel shani mar ba'af, Beis Sharach Sajim Merpeses. Is it possible that I can even say that sort of these like a Beis Shar, like these different entrances to your chotzer would be chayav in a mezuzah? Talmud Lomar bayis, therefore it says house. Ma bayis miuchad ledira, just like your house is a place that's specific for living. Yatsu elu she miuchad ledira, to the exclusion of these different mirpesets, these different what's a mirpeset, balcony or whatever, things like that, those are going to be potter from a mezuzah, because it's not specific for living in. Is it possible that you're going to put a mezuzah in the bathroom, in the tannery, in a bathhouse, in a mikvah? Bias. It says your house. Your house is made for your honor. Therefore, also we put a mezuzah in a place that is made for honor. To the extent, to the exclusion of these places, like a bathhouse and a bathroom, that are not made for honor. Is it possible that harabayis and the azaris and the offices in harabayis, would you put a mezuzah on those? It says house. Your house is not holy per se, so therefore also we put mezuzah on places that aren't particularly holy. Kodesh, to the exclusion of the harabayis and the shachos and the azaris, because they are holy. Therefore, you wouldn't put a mezuzah there. Interesting. Tiyuvta. So it's a kasha and Rav Yehuda. There's not much you can do about that. He can't really argue that everyone agrees that these storage areas are patur from mezuzah. If we see that there's a brisa that at least shows that at least one opinion says that it would chayiv in a mezuzah. Tanu Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda kami de Rava. Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda taught in front of Rava. Shisha shayrim turim min mezuzah. There are 6 gates that are patur from mezuzah, and now he goes and lists 7 gates. Beis hatevenu, beis habakar, where you keep your straw, and where you have your cows, uveis ha'etzim, uveis ha'otzaros, and where you have your wood, and where you have your like store different things like wine and oil. Ushar hamadi, as well as the median gate, which is has an arch on the gate. Vishar she'eno mikora, as well as a gate that doesn't have a roof on top of it. It's just open straight up. You wouldn't put a mezuzah. Vishar she'eno gavoa yud, as well as a gate that is not 10 tefachim tall. You would not put a mezuzah on that either. Amalei pasachto b'shisha v'salakto b'shiva, says Rava, who's being very attentive to what Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda was saying, and he says, wait a second, you just told me you were going to list 6 things, and then you listed 7. Amalei sharamadi tanoi. So says Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda, he says, yes, you're right. The median gate with this arch on it is actually a machlokes tanoim. The Tana is, we learn in the brisa kippah, and this is a gemara that we saw in Masechta Eruvin and Daf Yud Aleph, that if you have this sort of entrance with like a archway, Reb Meir mechayiv b'mezuzah v'chacham potrim. Reb Meir says it's chayiv b'mezuzah. The chacham say it's potter from mezuzah. V'shavin shem yesh beragla asar shechayeves b'mezuzah. Both Reb Meir and the chacham agree that if there is 10 tefachim at the legs of it, then it is chayiv and mezuzah. Now, what are we talking about just before we go on? We are talking about, imagine, a door in a wall or something. So you have a door, or some kind of opening in a door, in a wall, right? So now you can walk through this. So we're saying that you have this opening, and it kind of like, how do I even explain? Right, it's like Eruvin stuff again. Again, I'm trying to explain walls and stuff. You basically have what do you want me to tell you? It's a wall with an arch. What do you want me to tell you? A wall with an arch. Like an opening in a wall, but it's not completely open. There's 2 sides and also a top, but the top isn't flat. It's arched. Okay. I hope that's a decent enough explanation. Wow, I'm back to Eruvin. So let's read that again. Right? The Tanya is willing to a kippah. So if you have this entrance with an arch, so Reb Meir mechayiv b'mezuzah. So Reb Meir says it's chayiv a mezuzah on this archway. V'chacham potim, the chacham say you don't have to put a mezuzah on this archway. V'shavin, but they both agree shem yesh beragla asar shechayev b'mezuzah. Both Reb Meir and the chacham agree that if the sides of this entrance are 10 tefachim, so then you're gonna put a mezuzah on that entrance. So I'm right, because it's 10 tefachim tall, and also, by the way, right, it also has to be 4 tefachim wide. Okay. So now Amar Abaye says Abaye. So it says Abai, look, everyone agrees that if the entranceway is 10 tefachim tall, however, it already is less than 4 tefachim wide before it reaches 3 tefachim off the ground, Vilav klumi, you're not going to put a mezuzah on that. Everyone agrees in that case you're not going to put a mezuzah on it because, because within 3 tefachim of the ground, it's considered like aras michta. It's considered just the curves of the ground. And therefore, if already within 3 tefachim of the ground, it's less than 4 tefachim wide, well then you don't have a 4 tefachim width, and there's nothing to talk about. V'lav klumi. Inami yesh baragla gimel ven gavoa yud. Now, what if for 3 tfachim there are 4 tfachim, for 3 tfachim tall, there's a width of 4 tfachim in this opening. However, there is no total of 10 tfachim height on this opening in the wall. Well, then v'lav klumi. Everyone agrees that it's not going to be chayiv in a mezuzah because it has to be at least 10 tfachim tall. Lo nechleku, where the machlokas is ele b'gavoa yud. So you have this entranceway, and the entranceway is 10 tfachim tall. Ve'esh baragla gimel, and for the first 3 tfachim of its height, there are 4 tfachim width. Ve'ein baruch ba dalid v'yesh ba lachuk la'ashlim al-arba. But what happens is that before the entranceway gets to 10 tfachim tall, it already starts arching, which means that already within 10 tfachim, there is less than 4 tfachim width. Right? So for the first 3 tfachim of the opening in the wall, there is a width of 4 tfachim. But already after 3 tfachim, the arch begins, and it starts becoming less than 4 tfachim width. Now the total, let's say the peak of the arch is 10 tfachim off the ground. So now the question is, if we can treat it as if we can imaginarily remove make like a 90-degree angle at the top of the arch, and if we can basically cut away at the arch and view it as if it's just an opening, like a 90-degree angle opening, well, then you'll have 10 tfachim, right? So Rav Meir says you can basically etch away the arch and view it as if it's a 90-degree doorway, and then you have 10 tfachim and you would put up a mezuzah. The Chacham say no, you don't cut away in order to complete the dimensions, and therefore, practically speaking, you don't have a 10 tfachim wall, and therefore you don't put up a mezuzah. Got it? And you don't have 10 tfachim with 4 tfachim width. Okay. Now we could probably forget about Eruvin for a while again. Taner Rabbanan, the rabbis taught Beis HaKnesses uVeis HaIsha uVeis HaShutfin. If you have a synagogue or a house that is owned by a woman, or a house that is owned by partners, chayeves b'mezuzah, you have to put up a mezuzah. Pshita, this is obvious. Why wouldn't you put up a mezuzah in these cases? Well, Ma'udetema, I may have thought to say Beisecha. The pasuk says your house, v'lo Beisa, not her house. Beisecha v'lo Bateim, your house and not their house, like partners. Kamash Malon. So therefore, we're saying no. Don't say that. Rather, everybody puts up a mezuzah. Ve'ema achinami. But one second, why don't I say wait? That's actually a good point. Beisecha v'lo Beisa, Beisecha v'lo Bateim. Amakra, the pasuk says l'man yirbu yimechem v'mei b'nechem. The pasuk says wait. It says if chasavtem al mezuzah Beisecha v'sherecha, you'll put up a mezuzah. L'man yirbu yimechem v'mei b'nechem, so you'll have a long life. Hane bo'chai v'hane lo bo'chai. What? Men require long life, women don't require long life. Everybody wants to have a long life, and therefore everyone puts up a mezuzah. Ela beisecha lamali. Well then, okay, that's great, fine, I'm down with that. But then how come it says beisecha, which can let us think that maybe there's things to learn out from it? So Kedirava, yeah, we learn out like Rava says. Rava says Rava derech bi'ascha. It's like the way that you come in, right? How do I know where to put the mezuzah? So when a person goes in, he goes in with his right foot first. So therefore, you put it on the right side of the doorway when you're coming into the house, as opposed to when you're coming out of the house. All right, fine. Tani idach, we learn in another brisa, Beis HaKnesses, a synagogue, Beis HaShutfin, and a place of a house that's owned by partners, Beis HaIsha, and a house that's owned by a woman, metamin bin hagoyim. They can they can get saras on them. Pshita, it's obvious. Why shouldn't they be able to get saras? I may have thought to say uva ashelo abayis, that the Kohen will come to the house who belongs to him. Lo habayis, lo v'lo lo. I might think his house, not her house. Lo v'lo lahen, his house and not their house. Kamash malon. Therefore, it's saying that no, even the house of a woman, even the house of a partner, of partners can get saras. Maybe I'll say, wait, no, maybe that's a good point. Lo and not la, lo and not lahem. So Amar Kro, the pasuk says, no, but it says that if there's tsaras, and when you get to your house in the land that you inherited. So that applies to anybody, to any of these people. Ella lo lamali. So then why does it say lo to him? Mishum yachid beso lo. So this is super interesting. You ready for this? Uvasher lo habayis. Right? It says that you'll come to the one who says it's his, meaning somebody who says this is my house. Nobody else is allowed in. These are my things. Nobody else is allowed to use them. A fellow like that gets tsaras. He's going to go, right? It says the Kohen is going to come to Asher Lo Habayis, to the person who says that this is my house, everybody get out. That's the one who's the Kohen is going to go to check to see if there's tsaras in his house. Mishum Yachid Beis Lo, somebody who says that this is my house, who makes his house specific for himself. She'enu Rotza La'ashul Kelev, he doesn't want to lend out his property, his things. Ve'omer she'ein lo HaKadosh Baruch ve'omer she'ein lo, and he says, I don't have any. What, you want to borrow epis? I don't have epis. HaKadosh Baruch Hu mefarsimo, the Eibishter, kind of puts them all out in the open. Kishimefana is based on when he's got to take everything out of his house, right? When he's got to clear out his house because there's tsaras on it, and it's clear that he was saying, I don't have this and that. He's just being a nudnik. To the exclusion of somebody who does share with other people, then the Eibishter has no reason to put tsaras in his house. Wait a second, can a synagogue really get tsaras? But we learned in the Brisa, is it possible that a synagogue or a study hall can get tsaras? Right, that the Kohen will go to the one who has the house to him. It has to be specific for him. To the exclusion of a synagogue or a study hall that isn't specific to any particular person. Lo kasha. It's no question. Harab Meir, harabanan. It depends. It's machlokus of Meir and Rabbanan. The Tanya is within the Brisa, Beis HaKnesses, Sheish ba Beis Dira L'Chazan HaKnesses, that if you have a synagogue that has a living space for the beadle of the synagogue, Chayiv b'mezuzah, so then you have to put up a mezuzah. V'she'ein ba Beis Dira, and if it doesn't have a living space for the person who works there, so then Reb Meir mechayiv v'chacham potem. Reb Meir says it's chayiv mezuzah. The chacham says it's potem for mezuzah. So just like Reb Meir says that a synagogue without a living space in it is chayiv mezuzah, so we'll also say they can get tsaras. And the chacham would say that just like the synagogue, you don't put up mezuzah, so you also it wouldn't get tsaras. V'ibay same, or you could say rabbanon. You could say ataka both. Both of them are the rabbis. When we say that a synagogue can get tsaras and when a synagogue cannot get tsaras, it's both the opinion of the rabbis. Below kasha, it's no problem. It depends if it has a living space in it, right? Just like the rabbis say that if there's a living space in the synagogue, so everyone agrees that you put up a mezuzah. So if there's a living space, then they would also agree that it can get tsaras. But if there's no living space, then they would say that it doesn't get tsaras. Or if you want to say they're both talking about even when it doesn't have a living space. So then how can it get tsaras? But the krachim or the kfarim. It depends if it's in a city. In a city, it's a big city has a big synagogue that isn't owned by any particular person, so then it wouldn't get tsaras. But in like a smaller village or neighborhood where there's a synagogue that's like owned by the people, so then it can get. Right, as Rashi says, the chfarim in villages called Bailav Nikarim, everyone knows the owners, Vareu Kibeis Ashutfin, and it's like a house that's owned by partners, and as we said earlier, that can get tsaras. All right, very interesting. Chaver, that was Daf Yud Aleph Masechta Yoma. What did we learn about in Daf Yud Aleph? So we at the beginning we had an interesting discussion about mezuzah in the entrances to cities. Abaye was asking of Safra, how come the city of Mechoza doesn't have a mezuzah at its entrance? And ultimately Abaye said because we have to be concerned about danger. Maybe the king is going to get freaked out about like what these random scrolls on the city entranceway, which then actually invoked the question about shluchei mitzvah eina nizokin. Rabbi Lazar says that the people doing a mitzvah don't get damaged. But that if it's in a place where there is inherently going to be danger, well then you might get damaged, which is why Abaye says that they're not going to put up the mezuzah publicly at the gate to Mechoza. Then we discussed a machlokas between Rav Yehuda and Rav Kahana about putting up a mezuzah in kind of like storage areas. Rav Yehuda's opinion was that by default, storage areas are not chayiv in a mezuzah. if, like you have, for example, women put on their jewelry there, i.e. you make it into a living space, so then there's machlokes about if it's going to be a chayiv mezuzah or not. Says Rav Kahana that actually no, the default status of a storage area is that it would be chayiv in is that it's machlokes whether or not it's chayiv in a mezuzah. But if it's a place where like women put on their jewelry there, i.e. it's like a living space, then everyone would agree that it would be chayiv in a mezuzah. We got into that the machlokas between the Chachamim and Reb Meir about a mezuzah on an archway that we saw in Masechta Eruvin. That basically the machlokas is if it's 4 tefachim wide for a height of 3 tefachim, but then it becomes less than 4 tefachim wide over the remaining 7 tefachim or more. So then, do we treat it like chokakin lahashmin, that we etch away the outside parts of the, we etch away the arch to make it like a 90-degree angle? And Reb Meir says yes, therefore it's chayiv mezuzah. The Rabbanan say no, therefore it's patur mezuzah. And then we learned about mezuzah in different places, like a house owned by partners, or a synagogue, or a house owned by a woman. There was obviously to say that in these cases maybe they wouldn't be chayiv mezuzah, but we say that they are chayiv mezuzah. Chevre, I hope you enjoyed. Have a great day. Peace out.